6 billion people, innumerable cultures, countless ideas. In this world of unrest, yearning and horror, there's a constant zeal to form a better planet. As the words of the spin doctors leave a numbness within those searching for the truth, come with us and observe Globespin. Welcome to Globespin. This week, we reveal an ingenious scheme designed to not only keep Madagascar's poorest children well fed, but well educated as a result. A simple and sound solution. We take stock of the airline wars, where one international carrier has made the biggest investment of its kind in aviation history. A winner-take-all decision. While most of us are aware of the international effort to rid Bosnia-Herzegovina of landmines, this week we discover another surprising initiative that's achieving some equally worthwhile results. Will peace ever come to the West African nation of Sierra Leone? The fight to keep that peace is turning out to be as tough as any battle during its 8 years of bloody civil war. Guatemala was, until recently, the setting for the longest civil war in Latin American history. The country has embraced peace and democracy and is clawing its way back from the brink. We're applying the finishing touches to a famous English landmark, poised to become the major new focal point of central London. And we put Ugandan AIDS infection under the microscope to reveal 1.84 million cases. Now, a new vaccine being tested in Kampala may hold the key to its eradication. All this and more on this week's edition of Globespin. 11-year-old Estelle and her friends have been up since 6 to go to school several kilometres away from their impoverished village. Like most poor children in southern Madagascar, they're not only eager to fill their minds, but their stomachs as well, and now they can. In this school canteen, Estelle and 200 other students receive their first meal for the day, a highly nutritious bowl of cereal to help them stay alert and active. Madagascar is one of the least developed countries in the world. Located in the Indian Ocean off the eastern coast of Africa, 70% of the people here live below the poverty line with a per capita income of just $250. The southern province of Tulia is the poorest region in the country. Situated in an arid zone, it's also vulnerable to droughts, cyclones and locust invasions. Chronic food shortage is a major problem, and school attendance is very low. To encourage parents to send their children to school, the UN World Food Programme and the Ministry of Education started the school feeding program. Since the 1980s, WFP has been involved in school canteen projects throughout the country. The Tulia project is the most recent one. Started 2 years ago, it has already helped raise literacy levels to 80% and will eventually benefit over 30,000 students from 200 schools. Keeping children in school is the biggest challenge. Boys don't attend because they need to help their parents in the field. Girls start schooling when they're about 8 years old. Many drop out at 12 to 14 to get married. But Estelle has no intention of leaving. She plans to become a teacher like her father. The school meals not only provide good nutritional supplements for the students, but also create much needed work for the adults. Run by the community, the feeding program employs women in the villages to cook. In return, they receive half a family ration to take home. Under the supervision of the WFP, volunteers visit the schools to ensure that the local parent-teacher associations receive all essential supplies. Since the introduction of the school feeding program, enrolment in the area is on the rise. A cooked meal of rice, beans and canned fish may be a simple dish, but for children who used to get very little, it's a feast and an ingenious way to keep parents sending them to school. After 3 years of research and development, British Airways claims to have redefined air travel for the new millennium. The facelift has cost the company a staggering $960 million, the biggest investment of its kind in airline history.
The whole purpose is to make sure that you're going to get your maximum, your best productivity, performance, alertness out of whatever you need to do at your destination.
I don't just want people to sleep well.
That was the message at the official launch recently that's claimed by some to be the make or break time for the company. With products sure to attract more executives and sleeper seats in business class, British Airways is hoping to lure travellers willing to pay more for premium services. No other business class product can fully recline to become a horizontal bed and offer long-haul travellers a good night's sleep in flight. Other British Airways initiatives include a refurbished Concorde, a new terminal at New York's JFK Airport, and an e-commerce venture with 5 of the world's leading carriers. This new internet marketplace is expected to handle $32 billion worth of airline-related goods and services. But the real message the airline wants to get across is that no matter what the service, it intends to be the industry leader of the 21st century. Good news for future travellers everywhere.
And just looking at each other again, just for one. Lovely.
A deadly battle is still being fought in Bosnia, some 4 years after the end of the hostilities here. The enemy is visible, hidden in the rubble and scrub surrounding homes and villages. An estimated 1 million landmines and unexploded shells still litter the landscape. The locals literally live in minefields, planting crops in areas with live ammunition and unexploded bombs. With nowhere else to go, it's a constant gamble whenever they step outside. For the past 4 years, there has been an international effort to clear 30,000 minefields in Bosnia. It's a slow and dangerous search. 200 deminers a year are needed to clear just 10 square kilometres. It's still a critical situation, but the painstaking work is paying off. Mine accidents are decreasing. In 1997, there were around 100 casualties a month, and just a quarter of that number today. But contrary to popular belief, this isn't the only type of international assistance on offer any longer. In Sarajevo, 20 young people from across the country are taking part in a radio and television training course at the Soros Media Centre. It's run by the BBC and supported by the British government's Know How Fund. The aim is to help young journalists train in objective broadcast journalism and bridge divided communities. This was the first school of its type, established in Bosnia in the summer of '96, just 6 months after the end of the war. The 10-week practical course brings together journalists from every corner of the Republic. They range from beginners to experienced reporters, cameramen and editors. There are some 300 radio and TV stations currently transmitting throughout the country. Students taking part in this course hope to get jobs within the post-war expansion of media networks. But by bringing together young Serbs, Bosnians, Croatians and Montenegrins, the course is also helping with the task of reconciling communities divided by bitterness and conflict. At today's editorial meeting, the students are planning a news report on the decision of Sarajevo's Gas and Electricity Board to cut off heating to people not paying their bills. As always, BBC experts explain how to best get the message across.
The top line has to be quite hard.
Up on the roof, another class is busy learning practical camera skills. With the first week's theory out of the way, week 2 involves technical training. Students learn about using the camera and are doing their first filming. Reporters get coaching in the tricky techniques of talking to camera. This is the 10th course of its kind the BBC has run at the Sarajevo Centre. The technology of broadcasting is covered, but the greatest stress is placed on the BBC's reporting guidelines. These include fairness, balance, accuracy and impartiality in covering events, whether, as here, reporting on an open-air chess tournament or tackling harder political stories. The young students who attend this school are essential to the media in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Today, over 150 graduates are among the best radio and television reporters in the region.
Znamo da ljudi koji završili ovu školu danas, među njima
The BBC and the Know-How Fund have teamed up to run courses in several other centres in Eastern Europe. Next year, they hope to begin similar studies in the Montenegrin capital, Podgorica.
Graovac, BBC škola, Sarajevo.
From a distance, Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, appears unscathed by the civil war that tore the country apart. But its streets bear the scars from 8 years of senseless violence and despair. Sierra Leone's on-again, off-again peace accord seems more piecemeal than permanent. However, a concerted effort is now being made by the international community to bring long-lasting stability to the war-ravaged nation. It was just over a year ago that rebels forced their way into Freetown, unleashing a reign of terror before being ejected by the Nigerian West African peacekeeping force. Independence returned briefly before the peace agreement collapsed yet again. Recently, armed rebels under the leadership of Fede Senko rounded up hundreds of UN personnel near the town of Makeni as they tried to disarm the ex-combatants. Several days of fighting ensued until 1,400 British troops entered the fray, with reinforcements from India and a UN peacekeeping force. War-weary civilians could again breathe a sigh of relief. In a welcome sign of normality, these primary school children gave a traditional greeting to Peter Hain, Britain's Foreign Office Minister. Mr. Hain handed over books and other supplies from a school in Britain, the first of a number of such exchanges planned between schools in the two countries. At a nearby camp for people disabled by the war, the inhabitants all have bitter memories and harrowing tales of rebel brutality. Thousands died. Others, including even young children, had their limbs hacked off with machetes or were carried off to fight for the rebel militias they despised. In all, the war cost 50,000 lives and displaced half the population of 4.5 million men, women and children. The numbers of those still missing without trace runs into tens of thousands. Before the rebels looted and sacked it, this was the police headquarters in Freetown. 300 police officers died during the fighting and all criminal records were lost. Rebuilding the force is now a priority. In the past, the police became highly politicised and were regarded as a representative force for unpopular governments. The new force for the new democratic Sierra Leone is trying to turn that around. Public support has been warmer than ever before. These Indian troops were amongst the earliest arrivals of the 6,000-strong multinational peacekeeping force, now in place to ensure the fragile peace holds. They facilitated the capture of rebel leader Fede Senko, who is now in the custody of the Sierra Leone government. News of Senko's arrest brought a rare feeling of relief to the people of Sierra Leone. He disappeared when thousands of demonstrators opposed to him marched to his Freetown residence soon after the final rebel uprising, and there had been little news of his whereabouts until now. His timely capture is sure to restore calm to the entire region. In a tense meeting with the despised rebel leader just months before his arrest, he'd agreed to abide by the directives of the peace accord and to cease the illegal trade of diamond smuggling that supported his warring faction. It now seems clear that the man responsible for some of the worst atrocities of the war had no intention of doing anything of the sort. Rich in alluvial diamond deposits, Sierra Leone should be a far wealthier nation, but in recent years all revenue from mining has gone to sustain rebel groups fighting to overthrow the government. Britain has pledged to bring an end to this illegal trade. Sierra Leone is in desperate need of foreign investment. But without the perception of complete security yet, few businesses are going to come here. So to encourage business to invest, the country's foreign minister, Dr. Samabanya, signed an investment promotion and protection agreement in Freetown. Social and economic recovery is in the air here, and although the peace is fragile, it is finally being allowed to put down roots. All here hope that those roots will prove as deep and long-lasting as those of Freetown's 200-year-old cotton tree, which has stood here since Sierra Leone was born. A year ago, Manuel had a crew cut and was a member of his country's military. Now he shed the army greens and represents the new face of post-war Guatemala. Like many of his compatriots, Manuel has successfully reintegrated into civilian life, not the easiest of tasks given the country's recent violent and bloodied past. For 36 years, Guatemala was marred by internal conflict between the army and guerrillas. Over 150,000 people were killed. The final peace settlement paved the way for the democratization of Guatemalan society. As a first step, peacekeepers demobilized some 3,000 guerrillas. At the same time, armed rebels supporting the military laid down their weapons. Then it was the Guatemalan army's turn to adapt to its new role under the peace accords, reducing its personnel by 33%. Harder to dismiss, these war widows carry their crosses as a silent reminder of recent horrors and the constant fear of massacres that threatened their villages. In just over a year since the government peace accord, people began to feel a difference. No more army patrols in the markets, and it's safe to gather in public without fear of being arrested for conspiracy. Overall life has improved in town with new hotels, banks, and restored phone lines. Most importantly, the peace accord protects the human rights of the indigenous population, like the right to use traditional names, wear indigenous clothes, and speak the Mayan languages in classrooms. Another restored right is access to justice. People in villages like Niger often had to travel up to 60 miles to see a judge. With an average income of less than $1 a day, even a cheap bus ride became a luxury. Now, a justice centre has opened in the village and a brand new civilian police is being established in the country. While new recruits are undergoing their final training, military police still patrol the streets, but they'll be stood down as soon as civilian police can take over. The issue of land ownership has created major problems in Guatemala. 2% of the population owns 60% of the land, and small farmers have to struggle hard to eke out a living. On top of all that, the recent civil war created countless refugees. People were forced to simply leave their land, and when they could finally return home, they discovered that other families had invaded and occupied their fields. 180 separate cases of land ownership came before the new Justice Centre on the day it opened its doors. When worldly justice fails, the mayor turn to their spiritual guides. The peace accord grants freedom of religion and respect for sacred places. Long before Christian missionaries, the cross had been a Mayan symbol for a never-ending life. At the end of the longest war in Latin American history, the Maya have every reason to hope that their culture will survive and thrive. When peacekeepers demobilized the former guerrillas as part of the peace accords, they too hoped they'd thrive in the burgeoning post-war society. Many of the combatants returned to their villages and families, but many had no place to go, no trade skills, and no money to survive on. 350 former guerrillas therefore opted to be part of an integration program. Years of jungle combat behind them, they now cleared land with their machetes and learned to plant corn and beans. So far, it's been a good harvest, and they plan to soon sell their corn on the market. With the assistance of international volunteers, Virginia and 45 members of the guerrilla faction now work in an old plantation house. Virginia was the group's nurse and spent 14 years fighting in the mountains. In exchange for their weapons, the guerrillas have received basic supplies for survival and construction materials. Rather than go their individual ways, the former fighting unit has decided to stay together as a group. Fortunately for army personnel, reintegration into civilian life is being made easier by the UN Development Programme, who are supporting workshops to train electricians, cooks, or hairdressers like Manuel. For Manuel, the transition from army to civilian life has been a smooth one, and most importantly, for the first time ever, he sees a bright future. More time for the family is Manuel's most precious asset in his new life. The salary isn't matching the old one yet, but he plans to open his own beauty salon soon, and his country's violent past will live only in his children's history books. Somerset House, one of Britain's greatest historic landmarks, is poised to become a major new focal point in central London when it opens to the public for the first time in over 200 years. Built on the site of a medieval royal palace, this 1,000-room mansion is now undergoing a $76 million restoration. Rooms originally designed to house government offices will soon be transformed into galleries, museums, shops, a restaurant and a summer cafe on the restored River Terrace. With a new glass and stone bridge planned to link the terrace with Waterloo Bridge, the South Bank and Covent Garden, it will indeed be central London's most spectacular new river vantage point. The courtyard will be restored to its original 18th century appearance, with fountains and new architectural lighting. Equipped with state-of-the-art production facilities, it's set to become London's newest open-air venue, allowing up to 3,700 people to attend performances. Once celebrated as the first true Renaissance building in England, Somerset House is giving the people of England something to celebrate again. The first test of a human AIDS vaccine in Africa has begun in Uganda, according to the US National Institute of Health. The announcement is seen as an important step towards developing a vaccine for countries hardest hit by the epidemic. In Uganda alone, it's killed nearly 500,000 people and left 1 million children orphaned. 10% of the population is believed to now carry the virus. To make matters worse, AIDS counsellors are often turned away by those who need them most. Home visits can identify sufferers in the community who are then shunned. After years of political wrangling, 40 local volunteers are now participating in the first phase of the US-sponsored LVAC vaccine trials, and early reports are already showing some encouraging results. They're called the Green Oscars, the world's top environmental awards. And in the best small town category, the winner this year was England's Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk. The people of Bury say the best thing about the contest was learning just how much they could achieve. Thanks for travelling with us. We look forward to your company again on the next edition of Globespin.